Game over. So was there anyone that was able to get 2 people for each one of your, the things you wrote down on your paper? You were able to, so you have 8 people on your paper? Okay, cool. Let's stand up or wave, put your hand up in the air. So let's give those folks a hand for completing it. Thank you so much for seeing that. Good job. So as you were going around the room, were there things that you saw on someone else's paper and you were like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? Or I forgot about that. And can you give me 3 examples of those things? Yes. Vacations. You're like, I forgot all about it. Sometimes we work so hard that we forget to take vacations, right? So vacations was one. What's another? Yes. Health. You saw that and you said, why didn't I think about that? And for myself, looking at how I can be healthy. And thirdly, what's one more example? What's that? Credibility. You saw that on someone else. Ooh, that's a good one. That's one of those 10-cent words, one of those big words. So credibility, so being believable, right, and following through on what you said, that's an important one. Were there things that were more difficult to find someone to sign on, or you actually did not find someone to sign on? Were there any examples of that? What were those? Yes? Country of origin. So if having a country of origin or knowing your country of origin is important to you or your people group, please raise your hand, even if it wasn't written on your paper. All right? Cool. What's another that was difficult or you didn't find someone to sign on? Yes? Disabilities. What about disabilities? Is it having a disability or... Okay. So if you value people who have disabilities or understand that if you live long enough, you will have a disability yourself, please raise your hand. All right. Cool. And yes, sir.
I put down motorcycles. Something I'm passionate about. I got a couple cringes.
So if having a really cool vehicle is important to you, even though it wasn't written on your paper, please raise your hand if that's important or valuable. Sweet. So what do you think what was the point of this particular activity? Why would I start a workshop session talking about microaggressions and micro-inequities with an activity like this? Yes?
From the point that we have more in common than we have that separates us.
Yeah, so we have more in common than the things that separate us, right? And so one of the things, was anyone surprised or excited to see the connections that they had with someone? Yeah, I see a lot of people nodding their heads, yes. Because, and all too often what we sometimes forget is that the veil between us is very thin in terms of the things that I want for myself and the things that other people want. The line between our clients and us, the veil is very thin. We're one slip away, we're one fall down a step, we're one accident from being on the other side of the table. And so the things that they want for themselves, ironically, are the same kinds of things we want for ourselves. And that the things that separate us, that veil, is what I like to call an obstacle illusion. Obstacle illusion. I was at a training one day, and a young lady stood up. She said, "No, sir, it's optical illusion." And I said, "You're right behind it." Right? So obstacle illusions. There are these things that create artificial barriers between us, so that we don't recognize our humanity. We'll spend some time talking about that in just a second. But I'm also curious as to some of the some people will consistently say, "Well, Andre, we look different. So doesn't that mean we are different?" And I would submit that we are not. That the fact that we look different is not a demarcation point where we can say we are different. Because, for example, I was not born black. I know some people are like, It's not a reverse Michael Jackson thing. I'm not, you know, that's not what I'm going through. But when I was born, on October 30th, at 3:53 in the afternoon, the doctor is there. My mom is in the stirrups, and those things are scary. I just want to. So my mom's in the stirrups. The doctor's there, and the doctor receives me from my mother. And in those days, they would slap the baby. And so being a self-respecting individual, I did the only thing I knew to do, which was to slap the doctor back. That's an old Richard Pryor joke, probably the only one I can tell. So the doctor hands me off to the nurse, and the nurse does her work, and she has her little flip chart, her clipboard, and she's going through the stuff, you know, how long I am, how much I weigh, you know, and then she gets to the part of her checklist that changes the nature of my life forever. She gets to the place on her form called race. And in the 70s, there were 3 categories of race. There was black, there was white, and there was other. And so the woman looks at me, and she looks at my parents, and she looks at me, and she looks at her list. She looks at my parents. She looks at me. She looks at her list, and then she makes her decision. Guess what she checks? Black. She checks black. And now the interesting thing for me about that is, you know, the question, what if she had checked something else? What might my life have been like? But the most profound question for me was, before she made a decision, what was I? I was human. I was a baby. So I was born human, but America made me black. You see, if I was born in the Dominican Republic, I'd be Hispanic. How does it show up on HR forms? It's confusing to me on HR forms. Non-black, Hispanic, black, Hispanic, non-black, chair, Hispanic, non-chair, Hispanic, just table. No, it's... Right? So if I was born in France, I would be a different racial group than I am because I'm in America. If I was born in Afghanistan, I'd have a different racial group than I have in America. And so those things are somewhat arbitrary. So if a person is a race, it should carry throughout all of humankind. In fact, it does not. And so I want to ask some follow-up questions to the things that you wrote down. So did anyone write down anything of those 4 things that you wrote down? Did you write down anything that had something to do with your racial or ethnic background? Did anyone raise your hand if you wrote something down that had something to do with your racial or ethnic background? So I don't see anybody raising their hands. Is that correct? Okay, cool. Did anyone write anything about their gender or their gender identity as one of those 4 things that they value or find important? So no one did anything about their gender or their gender identity. And so for this one, what I want you to do is I want you to jump up in the air and wave your hands like you don't care if you can say yes to this. Did you write down anything about your socioeconomic status? So I got no takers on race or on gender or socioeconomic status. Why do people not write those kinds of things down? What's that? That's not their identity. All right. Why else do people not write those kinds of things down? Because we don't work on Wall Street. All right. Why else? I'll let you off the hook. Because you're smart. You're smart. You did exactly what I asked you to do, which was to write down what? Things that are important to who? To you, to us, to the individuals in this room. And so those 4 things are very important to us. I'm not saying that our gender or our racial designation or socioeconomic status is not a factor and it's not important. I'm not saying that they are not important. But I am saying that the things you wrote down, that you were able to find commonalities on, are more important than those somewhat superficial things. Those are more important. And so when we think about it, we talk about this interconnection, we have to recognize that there are certain values and things that we have that the outside world does not necessarily appreciate the same way we do. So, for example, the concept of race is absolutely makes no sense. It is illogical to operate in a world based on that premise. And here's an example. President Barack Hussein Obama. He shows up ethnically how? Black. He shows, most people would say he is a black man. Is that the sum total of his ethnic identity? No. So his father was a black man from Kenya. His mother is a white woman from Kansas. They got together and they Obama'd. And so he shows up as a black man, which also means he could show up as a biracial man or a multiracial man, which also means if we follow the sickness of the racial logic or the illogic of the racial logic, he could also show up as a white man. Can you imagine how people would receive the President of the United States if he, Barack Hussein Obama, walked around saying, I am a white man? It's hard enough for some people to believe he was born. And so the outside world does a really good job of trying to make sure that we stay in these confined boxes so that they know how they think they can treat us and how we allow other people to treat folks who fit in those boxes. All right? And so we're going to talk about how to get out of those boxes, how to think more strategically, how to build on our commonalities so that we avoid micro-inequities. Yeah, so I want to just play really quickly a video from an excerpt of a speech of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., whose assassination just happened when? What's the anniversary of his assassination? April 4th, all right? Yeah, make sure I had 4, not 5. April 4th. I've been working with my little niece to put up 3 fingers. And the only way she could do it was to do like this. I'm 3, you know, so here we go. what were some of the themes that you heard in that particular speech, which was titled the Mountaintop Speech, right? Which was also, every time I hear that, it sends chills down my spine. And it sends chills down my spine because this is the last speech that Dr. King gave the night before his assassination. And so when I think about the themes that he gives us and the commission that he offers us, it really strikes me as something extremely profound. But what were some of the things that you heard in this particular excerpt from his speech? Yes?
He was including himself with the group, even though we may not be there at that point in time, physically. We may not be there to still be there.
All right. So he physically may not necessarily be with us as we make this progression, but his assumption is, and his command to us is to continue on. Even though I might not be there, we will continue on. Other things that folks heard. Yes.
When you stand up.
All right. So it's hard for someone to ride your back when you stand up, right? I thought that was a wonderful use of a metaphor to really demonstrate that point. Yes. Yes, ma'am. All right. So he's also trying to provide hope for everyone. All right. Any other themes that people heard that kind of spoke to them?
Just letting go of the fear.
Yeah.
About not having fear.
All right. So letting go of the fear, not being afraid of anyone. One of the things that I always wonder is, what kind of cereal these people ate that prepared them for the days that they had to face. I think about the fact that you're going to show up to a rally knowing that there are police officers with guns and water hoses and German shepherds, and you're going to show up to that rally and you know that they are going to, or there, at least there's a chance that they will unleash all of their power upon you, and you have no weapons. All you have is yourself. And so how do you have that kind of courage? And so it occurs to me that when we don't recognize that Dr. King was not just an educational, he wasn't just a scholar of this movement, but that he actually had some spirit caught in that as well. And so his title and his role as a spiritual leader is extremely important to understand. Otherwise, we miss the core of how we make things change. And one of the things that Dr. King tries to do through the civil rights movement is knit all of our souls together. To say, we're in this together. This is not a black thing. It's not a white thing. It's not an Asian thing. It's not a Native American thing. We're in this together, and we're going to do it together. The whole reason that he was in Memphis was because the civil rights movement was at a pivot point. It was going to be more encompassing, not just of these civil rights, but that we need to start talking about a declaration of economic rights. And so he went down to be supportive of the sanitation workers, who were not just black men. They were white men as well. And they had one thing that was in common, that they were working and that they were also poor. And so Dr. King said, you know what, we can offer our voice to this cause. And so as we look today, we have to recognize, is Dr. King coming back to save us from ourselves? Is he coming back? Is there going to be another Dr. Martin Luther King? Possibly somewhere in the world. Is there going to be another Gandhi to come back and tell us how we can reconcile with people who are enemies? Is there going to be another Mother Teresa who is going to show compassion to the throwaways and castaways of society? Is there going to be another Nelson Mandela who will teach us how to cooperate with our so-called enemies? Will there be another one? And I would say my first answer would be, no, there will not be another one, unless it is you. Unless it is you. Did you know that other people's liberty other people's ability to live a full life could be silenced behind your embarrassment. That your embarrassment could be keeping people locked up. Think of a time, and I'm sure you've had these times because I have them all the time, where you saw something and you just said, that's wrong. They should not be doing that. Or you heard you heard a comment, or someone comes to you with a statement, and you think about that thing, but you don't say anything. Robert's Rules of Order has taught me one thing about silence. So in Robert's Rules of Order, it's a way that we try to confuse community folks, and so they don't know what we're talking about in these meetings, right? So we in Robert's Rules of Order, there are 4 ways that you make a decision. So the chairperson says, well, I call the question, so we're going to make this decision. And if you like the decision, or you think it's a good idea, what do you say? You say, yes, I agree, right? If you think it's the dumbest thing you've ever heard and you don't want any parts of that, what do you say? You say, nay, I don't agree. And let's say you have you have a vested stake in this decision, either way, whether positive or negative, or in some way you'll benefit from this decision. What are you compelled to say? What do you have to say for the record? I recuse myself, or I abstain from this particular vote. So the first way is that you say, yes, I agree. The second way is you say, no, I don't agree. The third way is that you say, I abstain. And what is the fourth way that you make a decision using Robert's Rules of Order? You say nothing. And when you say nothing, it is understood that you accept whatever decision we're making. And so when we see people in the community and we see people acting out and we don't say something, their default is what? That you agree. Now, what I'm not asking people to do is to carry picket signs in the back of their trucks. I'm not asking people to grandstand, but I am asking you, in whatever way you can, in your circle of influence, encourage people to think. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. We'll skip some of that. What we'll do is we'll examine the definition, explore concepts surrounding micro-inequities. We'll provide examples of micro-inequities. We'll explore what we can do to minimize the effects of micro-inequities. Sometimes I talk a lot so I don't get to the end, so I'm going to do the end first, and then we'll come back and backfill. Why is this conversation about micro-inequities important? And it's because it has a direct impact on discretionary effort. A direct impact on discretionary effort. And discretionary effort is the amount of work that I want to put into a thing to fulfill my contract. So if I do a thing at 70%, I have fulfilled the contract. But have I given my best? Would you assume that if you got 70 on a test that a student necessarily did their best? I would not assume that. I would challenge them that they could actually give more. And my giving more is largely based on how I feel about the engagement that I'm having in a process. So if I come to work and I feel like people don't like me, even if it's not true, but if I feel that, I'm not going to give 100%. I'm going to give closer to that 70%. So if people are telling sexist jokes, or they're making comments about ethnic groups, I will tell you, anytime that someone tries to tell me anytime someone gossips about someone else, I'm concerned about that person. Because if they're doing that for someone else, then they're probably doing it about me. So I get concerned about that. I get concerned about workplaces where it's okay for people to curse. Now, I'm not a prude. I'm not telling people how to relieve stress. But I will say that is a level of disrespect that does not end when those words come out of your mouth. Every time that I've worked in a workplace where cursing was acceptable, I also found that there were other behaviors that were also a part of that workplace, that cursing is just the canary telling us what else is going on in the organization. But that's another workshop. So discretionary effort is all that I want to put in, my attitude, my thoughts, my power that I want to give to this thing that gets reduced because of micro inequities. One of the solutions, and we'll come back to this, is to make sure that people get dignity and honor because they exist. None of us have done anything to bring ourselves here, and we're not as great as we think we are. And we're all trying to figure out what our humanity is. What does it mean to be human? And I will tell you this about humanity. There are 3 things to know about humanity. It is questionable if I am human if I'm on an island by myself. It's questionable if I'm human. So humanity shows up when I am in authentic relationship with another human, because we mirror our humanity. My humanity is magnified when I am in the service of that other individual and not just of myself. And the third thing to remember about humanity is that you are always human. Even when people don't treat you that way or you lose sight of it, you're always human. We'll come back. We'll come back. We'll come back. These workshops are so short, and I love them. So I want to talk about a few truths about human beings, and then we'll hit the micro inequities. So one of the truths about human beings is that we can learn, change, and grow. At any point that we stop holding that light out for people, it's time for us to retire. Because there were certainly adults in my life who never thought that I would get it. But I did. I finally got it. Not sure exactly what it is, but apparently to them, I got it. People do what they think works even when what? Even when it doesn't work. And why do they do something, although they think that it works, and it doesn't work? Why do they keep doing it? They don't know any better? Okay. Why else? Habit. Why do habits develop? Because they keep doing it over and over again. And why do they keep doing it over and over again? Because what? It makes them feel safe. Somehow they're reinforced for doing it. And at some point it worked. At some point it worked. And so they keep doing it, even though the context may have changed, because they said, it worked one time and it worked really good. So maybe I just need to do it more. Or maybe if I do it like this, or if I do it like that, maybe it'll work, right? When do they realize, or when does that behavior change? When does that behavior change for them? Because they already realize it's not working, but they keep doing the same thing. So when does that behavior change? When someone shows them another way, when an outside person shows them. I'm showing Jimmy, you keep running into the wall. It's not working for you. Jimmy, he keeps running into the wall. It's not working. And Jimmy just keeps. When is Jimmy going to change? When Jimmy realizes that the pain of running into that wall is too much for me. I don't need to do that any longer. Right? Suffering ends when we realize it's no longer necessary. When we realize it's no longer necessary. All human behavior is goal-directed. All human behavior is goal-directed, even if I don't know what the goal is, and even if people aren't necessarily clear about what the goal is for themselves, it is always goal-directed. And we'll talk about what those goals are in just a second. Attitude is a reaction to a goal. Anyone have a teenager in your life? What happens when the teenager comes up to you and says, please, kind adults, I was wondering if I could go to Cindy Wentworth's party. And you're looking at the kid and you're like, wait, your room is a mess. You've been fighting with your siblings and you got C's on your report card. No, you can't go to Cindy's party. What happens to their attitude? They get angry and they slam the door. So they go stomping off and they slam the door like they paid something for it. Right? Like they own something. Right? And so you go, you change your mind. You're like, you know what? I like Cindy. I want her to hang with Cindy because Cindy is doing great things. So you go back to her room and you knock on the door. You say, you know what? You can't stay for Cindy's whole party. You can stay for an hour and a half. I'll drop you off. I'll pick you up. We'll take care of this other stuff later. What happens to the kids? Attitude. Right? They at least want to talk to you. They don't mind being in the car with you as you're driving them to Cindy's party. And I will let you know, this is the time that you get the Facebook password. So that's the time. So what's the demarcation between a good attitude and a bad attitude? Getting what you want, right? And then, in an adult, sophisticated way, we call that goals. So when you reach your goals, right? But for kids, it's like, I got what I wanted. So if we see somebody with a bad attitude, what do we know about them for sure? They're not reaching their goal, right? And as helpers, what are the two things that we can do to help somebody reach their goal? What's the easiest? Give them what they want, right? That's the easiest. But what if what they want is something that you can't give them, is too big for them, it's too big for me, and even if I could give it to them, they couldn't handle it in the first place. Then what becomes my responsibility? So I'm explaining it to them. Is that changing their attitude? So now they have information and they're like, oh, okay, I'm still pissed off, but now I know why. Yeah. So now I have smaller chunks of information that I'm still pissed off about, but thank you. I appreciate that. Help them find another goal. Help them find it. Because as practitioners, we want to rescue folks. We want to tell them. But if we give them a goal, what happens? Right? If it's successful, who do they give credit to? Themselves. They do. They say it's fine. But they didn't come up with the idea. But if it fails miserably, who do they blame? You. Right? So we have to help them find new goals. As a teacher, I would always have students in the back of the room that were distractors and wanted attention. So I gave them what they wanted. And I made them my assistant. Right? Why am I going to fight the back of the room and just bring them up to the front and you become my assistant? So now all the kids that used to follow them are not following them as they follow me. And so they get to collect the papers. They sit in the front of the room. They sit next to me. So I have them very close to me. I gave them what they wanted, not necessarily how they wanted. Do you want 10 P's or 7 P's? Don't ask if kids want peas or cake. It's a setup. Right? So ultimately, what are humans' goals? Humans' goals are looking for safety, significance, and belonging. Safety, significance, and belonging. Significance says that I'm a person with purpose and power. I was born for a reason. Either a reason that I decide or a reason that I find. I was born on purpose. And I would have high school students who had low self-esteem and they'd say, I'm a loser. I can't do anything. And I said, no, you're a winner. Because out of all of the millions of pieces of matter that came from your father and met your mother's egg, you are the winner. So if you did it once, you can do it again. Right? Belonging is that I want to be in relationships with people who understand my significance, who understand my power. Right? It's funny, when I taught high school, all the loners would hang together. It just seems like an oxymoron to me if you're alone. Okay. And then lastly, we want to be in relationships that are physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually safe for us to interact with other human beings, to recognize those first two. And so that's everything that we're going for. And so when we talk about micro-inequities, what micro-inequities do is they diminish our ability to get those things. So the context is extremely important. Context is everything. Context is everything. Which of these circles appears to be smaller? Which one of the center circles appears to be smaller? The one on the right. And why is that? In relationship to the ones that are around it. The truth of the matter is both center circles are exactly what? The same size, right? They're exactly the same size. So when we talk about this concept of micro-inequities, what we have to realize is that micro-inequities are precursors to something larger and something a bit more vicious. So in your handout, I have one right here. Let's turn to page 4. So in a number of the trainings either that I've attended and in my younger days that I used to lead, I wasn't always sure exactly where I was supposed to be pointing people, right? I wasn't sure what the goal of the real objective of the training was. And so as I've gotten older and I've gotten a little bit wiser, I have figured it out. And if you are attending any diversity training of any sort, and it's not pointing you to the Constitution of the United States, if it's not pointing you to the fact that everyone needs to have the rights that the law declares that we should have, then I would say that training might be questionable at best. So the Constitution of the United States becomes our pinnacle when we talk about social and economic justice. So first of all, we the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and the securing of blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We do ordain and establish the Constitution for the United States of America. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their creators with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. So if those words don't get your heart pumping, you need to check your pulse, right? So that's a great document, great words, and those are the things that I am going to hold America accountable to. People would say, well, Andre, when they wrote those words, man, they wasn't talking about you or people that look like you. And what I would say to that is, if they did not want me to hold them accountable to it, they should have never wrote it down, and they never should have allowed me to learn how to read, because I'm going to hold them to these things. All right? And so when we talk about micro-inequities, these are precursors to something larger. And we're going to talk about what that something larger is right now. So the Emancipation Proclamation was signed January 1st, 1863. And what did that do? Freed the slaves, freed the slaves, freed the slaves. That's what people typically say. But what is a slave? It is property. A slave is property. So it freed property. Was it property that worked from sunup to sundown picking cotton? Was it property that worked from sunup to sundown rolling tobacco? Was it property who had dreams and hopes and ambitions that were dashed by a sadistic system designed to make money? Was that property that lived those lives? Was it property? No. What was it? They were humans. And so from now on, you can no longer say, you can't allow other people to say that there was a time called slavery. You have to say that these were people in the system of slavery. That little change not only will be a cognitive change, but it will be a heart change as well. The next thing is 1920, the 19th Amendment is signed, giving what to who? Women the right to vote. I hear woman, hear me roar. Right? 1924, the Indian Citizenship Act is signed, giving Native Americans citizenship in the United States. Pause for the irony. 1964, the Civil Rights Act is signed. That does what? What does it do?
Sets up a system of equality no matter what.
It sets up a system of equality no matter what? What did it do? It outlawed segregation. Americans' version of apartheid or Jim Crow. It outlawed. It said it can't be, we can't have that in our society. And it did one other thing. It defined discrimination, right? It defined discrimination and it ended segregation. 1978, Native American Freedom of Religion Act is signed, giving Native Americans the right to worship the way that they want. In 1978, pause for the double irony. On a nation built on religious freedom, some folks didn't get it till 78, which was not that long ago. And lastly, 1990, the Americans with Disabilities Act is signed, doing what? For who? Doing what for people with disabilities? Giving them equal and open access to goods, jobs, services, and money, just like everybody else. So giving them access, right? So when we talk about micro inequities, this is a precursor to something greater. We'll talk about the something greater as it comes out of what we just read. All right? So, I want you to look at this picture. It's called The American Girl in Italy. And what is happening in this picture? What's going on in this particular picture? What do you notice?
She looks uncomfortable.
She looks uncomfortable. She's capturing everyone's attention. It appears to be unwanted attention. She's the only woman in the picture. Are they doing anything to her that is illegal? No. When she gets to wherever she's going, let's say she's going to work. When she gets to work, is she going to be prepared to give her 100% best at work, having gone through this? There's a possibility that she won't, right? There is a possibility that she could, she could be a very strong individual and say, I'm going to not, If she's going home to her family, is she going to be 100% present or able to give her best to her family after going through something like that? There is a possibility that she might not be able to give 100%. Obviously, there is a possibility that she could. What we see here is a version of micro inequities. And it's not anything that's illegal. It's not illegal, but it is harmful. So when we talk about micro inequities, we're talking about things that are hurtful.
Number one, race is a modern idea.
What we have to understand is that hurt people hurt people. When we got the mandate to replicate and multiply ourselves, we only multiply what we are, what we know, what we do. And so we're constantly trying to replicate ourselves. And so hurt people hurt people. And when we talk about micro inequities, what we're talking about is the difference between intent and the difference between impact. Right? And so all too often, what we don't understand is that there's a difference between the impact and the intent of emotion. All right? So, a quick version. So I'm walking down the hall, I'm at work, and one of my coworkers swats me on the butt and grabs. And we're not on the softball team together. We have a problem, don't we? Right? Who gets involved in that process? HR, human resources, right? So we take it to human resources, and if I don't get justification with human resources, then where do I go? So I might get an attorney, I may go to the state and file a grievance, and it may end up in the Supreme Court, So it's this whole judicial process that we start to embark on, because the law does not make it. The differentiation that the law makes is that The law says we will look at the impact. So if you look on page 5, the law says we will look at the impact of a behavior. And so what if the person says, you know what, I swatted and I grabbed, but I was just joking. You know, that's how we have fun like that. But I certainly didn't see it that way. HR is not going to say, oh, you were just joking. Okay, we're good. It's all good, right? They're going to take it down a whole other path. When we talk about our human relations, what's more important is our intent in our behavior, sometimes more so than the impact itself. And so when we talk about inequities and microaggression, what we're talking about are people's intentions and how they interact with other people. Have you had a conversation with someone on the phone and you knew they were smiling? Couldn't see them, it wasn't Skype, right? But you knew they were smiling. Because there's something spiritual about our connections with each other that we can pick up that stuff, right? We can pick up all that stuff. And so that's why cursing, I think, is problematic, because people can also pick up on that too. Right? So when we talk about intent versus impact, how many people have gotten a present from someone or an apology from someone that was forced to give it to you? Or they did it because they felt guilty. How did you receive that gift? I usually took it, I just put it on eBay. You know, right? So that's not something that we want. We don't want those kinds of gifts, because it's the intent in our human relations that are extremely important. And so when we look back at this picture, do these folks seem to have good intentions for her? Right? It doesn't seem as though they might, and they very well may, and we're assuming a lot, we're making lots of judgments, but I want these judgments to make us think, right? And so when we're operating with these micro inequities, it is not about what the intention is for the other person. We don't really, we see them as a thing as opposed to a person, and it's about what our intentions are, right? So, turn to page 10. So what is bigotry? Now we're still talking about microinequities. What is bigotry? Anyone known a bigot, seen a bigot, been around a bigot? What?
Preconceived notions about somebody, usually negative.
All right, preconceived notions about someone, and they're typically negative. Bigotry. Archie Bunker, right? So there are a lot of people in here who aren't old enough to know who Archie Bunker is. So Archie Bunker was this character on television, on the television show called All in the Family. He was kind of a blue-collar, hard-working man. I'm not even sure what he did. I think he worked in some kind of factory or something. And he was very opinionated. He didn't like anybody. I don't even think he liked himself. Because he didn't like certain kind of white people. He didn't like certain kind of black people. He just didn't like anybody. But he did like Sammy Davis Jr. He did like Sammy Davis Jr. And so Archie had these very strong opinions about other folks. And what do we typically say about bigots? What helps? What do we bring to bigots to be helpful, to help them? What do people say about bigots? They are ignorant. People usually say that. They say they're ignorant. And so when I encounter bigots or Archie Bunkers, what I used to do is I would bring information to the bigot. I'd say, sorry, bigot, here's some statistics. Sorry, bigot, here's some facts. Right? And every time I would bring information to the bigot, what would the bigot do? They would dig in deeper, and they dig in deeper until I got them cornered up against the wall. And then finally they tell me what's wrong with them. And they say, Andre, I don't care what you say. This is how I feel. Oh, bigotry is an emotional state. What changes or moves emotions? Experiences. What changes emotions? All right, let's bring it to you in your own life. How many of you have had a friend that was sad, had the blues? I'm not talking about clinical depression, just the blues. We all get it sometimes. What did you do with that friend to get them out of their blues? You made them laugh. What did you do? You listened. You sat with them. You visited, right? You visited with them. What else? You changed the environment. So let's go out. Let's do something. Let's get a cup of coffee. Let's take a walk. Let's go buy something. Let's go. So you bring them empathy. You bring them love. Data does not change emotions. Emotions change emotions. And so if hate is a strong emotion, then you have to come with something that's as strong as hate. And what is stronger than hate that eliminates hate? Love. You have to love a bigot. What? Yup. Do bigots get better because you have cut them off? No. They will only get better because you're tied to them. Now, I'm not saying you have to take all their stuff, but I am saying that you have to be tethered to them. Give them enough rope to go out and see what's going on, but you stay with them because they only get better when they're connected with better people. Prejudice. I've been taught that prejudice is bad. I believe that prejudice is good. It will save your life. I'm walking down the street. It's 11:30 at night. There are 6 guys coming towards me. What decision do I make? I cross the street. Why? I'm prejudiced. I have prejudged the situation. But what prejudiced people do is they take a good decision out of its original context and try to apply it in another way. And it typically doesn't work. So now I'm at Cub. I'm going down the aisle and there are 6 people coming towards me. Using the logic from the street, what decision do I make? I turn around. I try to go down another aisle. But what happens when I go down that aisle? There's 6 other people. So it doesn't work in this new context, but it made sense in another context. People will say, I know 5 Native Americans, and all Native Americans, those 5 are drunks, and so all Native Americans are drunk. There's 2 flaws in that logic. One is the word all. The second is, out of all the Native Americans, why do you know all 5 of them? Why do you know 5 of them? Because my grandfather would say, birds of a feather flock together. So if you know 5 drunks, you might be one of them. Right? So I want you to think about a stereotype of another group. I want you to think about those things that we don't talk about except for in our close circles about other groups. I want you to think about that stereotypes. You know, these people are drunks. These people are thieves. These people are trying to get over in the system. Then I want you to shake your family tree and see if drunks or thieves or people trying to get over on the system fall out of your family tree. So whatever we can say about another group, we can say about our group, and more importantly, we can probably say about our own family. We are so much more alike than we're different. But these artificial barriers allow micro-inequities to continue. It is my belief that there are, so let's go down to the last one, discrimination. Who said they would take care of discrimination? Who said that they would take care of discrimination? We just read about it. 1964, somebody said they would take care of discrimination. The government. The government said, we will take care of discrimination. So if people act out of character, we got that. So since the government said they would take care of it, it's obvious we have no more discrimination. Yes! All right, nobody's throwing a party with me. Do we still have discrimination? Why do we have discrimination? government can't do it by themselves. Micro inequities. See, when we start talking about discrimination, micro inequities are precursors to discrimination. Micro inequities are those bigoted thoughts that people have. I mean, those bigoted emotions that people have, and those prejudicial thoughts that they have. Is there a law? Is the government going to create a law that says how I can feel as an individual? No, there's no law about that. What's that?
So let's hope not.
Let's hope not, right? So currently there is no law that says that. Is there a law that says how I'm supposed to think? There's not necessarily a law that says that. So whose job is it? Because the government said they will take care of how people act. And what we know about human behavior is that emotions plus thoughts dictate people's behavior. So if we still have the behavior of discrimination, micro inequities become the answer as to why those things happen. So whose responsibility is to take care of people's emotions? The government's not going to do it, so whose responsibility is to change someone's emotion? It's our job. Whose job is it to help people change their thoughts? It's ours. Many of us have grandparents who call Brazil nuts by another name. How do I get grandma to quit saying that? And what I'm referring to is that Brazil nuts are these nuts that are about the size of an orange wedge, and they're wooden and really crinkly, and they are typically referred to, particularly by older folks, as nigger toes. Is how they refer to those nuts. And many of those folks don't even know that there's another name for the nut other than what they've been taught. And so how do I get grandma to quit calling it that? Do I give her a lecture? Do I give her some statistics? What do I do for grandma? I love her. I ask her questions. One of the things that teens hate is when you ask them questions. They would rather be tortured in some other manner than you asking a bunch of questions. And why do they not like it so much? Because it makes them think. Those attorneys, they ask questions that they know they're going to get kicked out. But they ask them because they want people to think. And so when we hear things in our workplaces that are inappropriate for the goal of work, when people want to tell us inappropriate jokes, and you know an inappropriate joke is coming because someone will say, "Can I tell you a joke?" If they ever give you that setup, say no, because you know it's wrong. It's a bad joke. If you're in a grocery store and you see something go down, you have to say something. Otherwise, these micro inequities continue to grow until they become discrimination. My name is Andre Koen. Thank you so much for your time. I'm 2 minutes over, so
Actually, you have 3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Okay, cool. So I want to open the floor for any questions. Any questions? No questions?
We're so in awe that we just.
Well, thank you. Yeah. I don't have any, but I think my set is on the handout. And I can give you my set too.
Please take your time to fill out the evaluation. And thank you, Andre, for a great presentation.
Good. Thank you. Just know I do weddings, bar mitzvahs, and funerals. I am a riot at a funeral.
That is done.